Okay, let's go. Before I start, I need to justify myself in two ways. First off, I shaved my beard. That is a black spot, which is not anything. It's just a shadow of the microphone. Second of all, I created a bit of a meme to illustrate this point. I think I should play gambits. And why? Well, let's look at the meme. Let's make it a bit bigger, make it readable. So, at the earliest level, gambits are good because the pawn you give away doesn't matter and your opponent struggles a lot. And I mean, you'll win pieces, so it doesn't matter. Then at some point, gambits stop being good because the pawn actually matters, and you just, once you can defend it to an extent, you just win a pawn as the defender, and then you'll just win that game because the pawn is good enough to win. And then I believe, I would argue at least, I'm at the level where gambits are good because the pawn doesn't matter anymore. And the point is that a lot of the endgames you get into, the pawn really doesn't matter. If you get into a king versus king endgame, generally the pawn does matter, but also king position matters a lot. So if you have an active king, then you could compensate for that. Rook endgames are generally drawn, and you can generally prevent rooks from being traded. So that's often that's just often a draw, and then the pawn really doesn't matter. You can even be down 2 pawns occasionally, and then like minor piece endgames, it occasionally matters. But even then, if you have an active piece, like if you have an active knight versus a bad bishop, you're totally fine, generally. And the main point is that you get so good at defending bad endgames that one pawn generally doesn't cut it anymore in a lot of endgames. And that's a fallback. The before that, the endgame, or before the endgame, you generally have a good position, like good positional position, and you can make your opponent waste or spend more time, not waste, they absolutely need to spend more time, do a lot of calculations, and you can put pressure, and yeah, that's why I think gambits are good again. And then at both extremes there is you can argue that there's an extra level where it is gambits are bad despite the pawn not mattering. So at the very bottom, like, everybody throws so many pieces that it doesn't matter any pawn, and at the top of the top you can defend the pressure that you get from a gambit so well that you don't really get anything from a gambit. But I'm not at that level yet, so I've looked at some gambits to play, and I want to play a lot of them. So today was the first of an attempt at a gambit, and I played white. I forced myself to be white because, I'm the one that makes the team setup, and I just chose white for myself because I found out, and you can check this on my YouTube. The last 7 external matches I played as black. The last 7, and yeah, so I wanted to play white again. And this is a special day because we as a team actually won our won our match, which is the first time that has happened. I am a team leader of 2 teams actually, in 2 different competitions. In one of them, this is the first match we've won. We've drawn 1 and we've lost 2. And in the other competition we are 0 for 5. And I played 4 black in a row in that competition, it turns out. And here it's not that bad in this competition. But yeah, now I play white. So let's take a look at the game. I am an e4 player, which you might be surprised to learn after the last 7 matches, because I didn't play e4 because I wasn't white. And my opponent played a Sicilian. I looked at this, well, basically I looked at 2 main ideas, or 2 main openings. If my opponent was an e5 player, I would play this, and I'd play the Evans Gambit, which I looked at and it was interesting. But against c5, I decided to play what's called the Smith-Morra Gambit, which goes, which you get to after d4, you take, and then c3. You can still transpose, by the way. You can play like knight f3, and then like d6 and take, and then you get a normal like Najdorf or something. The engine actually also claims that e5 here is good, which is also interesting. I quickly looked at that, but I decided in the game to just play the actual Smith-Morra Gambit, which is c3. And there are 2 lines here that I looked at, and it's not the first 2 actually. So in the Danish Gambit, which goes e4, e5, d4, I believe that's Danish. Yeah, Danish Gambit here. You can be really annoying and play d3, which isn't a great move. Yeah, plus 0.7, but it nullifies a lot of the play that white actually has. But so I looked at that in this position as well, which is just these 2 are flipped. d3, which didn't happen actually. I'll just put the actual move in first. My opponent accepted the gambit, but d3, the line that the engine mentioned was something like this, I believe. Maybe not directly e5. Knight c6, yeah, this. Knight c6, c4, e5, a3, bishop c4, b4, bishop d4, rook a2, and then d6 and rook d2 was a move. Was not the best move, but it was a move. And I saw this and I was like, yes, I need to look at this. This looks fun. Didn't happen. This isn't great for either player. But they just took, which is the normal move, and I take back, which is again the normal move. And here my opponent tried to develop for the most part, and I just develop. I don't even force the issue or anything. After e6, I just develop, play bishop f4, which is one of the things that you can do in this position, because there's no knight on d4, so you don't get e5 issues. And this bishop on f4 is actually great. Not to take the knight, but after a move like d5, this would win a pawn. That it's not good, but it is true. Neither of these moves are good. But it's also just putting pressure here and here, which is something you rarely get to do as white, and especially prevents queen c7 for the most part. My opponent played a6 to prevent knight b5. Makes sense to me. I can still kind of try to force it after queen a4, but I decided not to. I decided to just develop knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, b5. My opponent here took some time and has kind of some issues developing. And b5 to develop this bishop is good, of course. But after bishop b7 and I castle, how do you develop? It's really difficult, actually. I see that twice. There are still 3 games in the database. Bishop c5 happened twice, d6 happened once. D6 is, I think, the correct move. Bishop c5 is a bit iffy, I think. I can't remember what I wanted. I believe I wanted to play e5 there and then use the tempo on the bishop that you get with the knight to plant the knight on d6 through e4. And knight f6, you also push e5, same idea. So you basically get tempo, and you can't play knight. I mean, you can play knight e7, but then the bishop gets stranded. The bishop can't go anywhere other than e7, and then the knight really can't go anywhere either. I mean, bishop c5 is apparently a playable move, but I don't know. I thought it was fine for me. My opponent didn't play it. My opponent played h6. Which, I don't know, is a move. I decided to ignore this and basically get my tempos when my opponent gives them to me. So instead of pushing e5 and trying to do this, I just set that up a bit, and I wanted to connect my rooks and like put them on the d file, but for that I need to move my queen, so I played queen e2. Maybe I should go queen d2, but I think queen e2 is good. Here my opponent played g5, which is definitely a weakening move. It's in the game it was okay, but I mean, you really do have some issues developing, so this is like an attempt. However, so I have a choice of remaining on this diagonal or moving on this diagonal, which is also very interesting generally. And after bishop e3, I still don't think you can develop this bishop, which is why I did that. Because my plan was after bishop g7 to play bishop c5. To put some pressure on d6. After d6 I get a rook here and then some issues in e5 and stuff. And if my opponent doesn't play d6, I play e5 and then plant on d6. And then my opponent can cry. I mean, they can also just go back in this position, but then I think I go to d4. And I think I won a tempo there. That's why I played bishop e3. And my opponent, instead of developing the bishop, played g4. Which I don't think is good, but it's okay. It does prevent my plan, so I played knight d4, putting pressure on the g4 pawn as well. So, and I genuinely thought, because my opponent is up a pawn, that they would take the time to play bishop c5. I think that's playable. And if not, bishop d6 is probably playable. I'd take the pawn, knight e7 or something, and then play continues and they have an open g-file and materials equal. That's what I assumed after g4 and knight moved. But my opponent defended, also fine. But I do get a lot of space, and the king really can't castle. So now I started to take some time to figure out how to actually attack the king. Because it's actually quite difficult. The king might not be able to move to safety on the edge of the board, but in the center, that's okay, right? This is a if you put a bishop on d7, it's like you did a fianchetto, like here and then put the bishop here. It's the same structure. So that, I mean, that's okay. So it's kind of difficult, but I do have open files in theory everywhere, in theory. So I just need to break through the E and F file, and then it's probably game over. That was my idea. But I did prep this a bit before I actually played f4, which was one of the moves I considered. The other move was just to take with the point of bishop d4, attacking here, and then and also preventing e5. And just putting my bishop on a great square. This bishop can't go to g7 ever. And now after that I play f4. My opponent had multiple options here. Move the rook, f6, knight f6. That's it. So these 4 options. My opponent played f6, which I thought was not... I mean, it's probably the best move, but... I mean, it's also a weakening move. I'm pretty happy here. I started calculating sacrifices on e6, sacrifice on f6, both. Rook d1 to do that. All of the stuff. And in the end I didn't do any of that. I just played f4, which is right. I played f4, yeah. And I looked at what if they take en passant, which is mandatory, of course, because it's en passant. And then you take back, and then how do you defend this? Like that, maybe. I can't play e5, but I can play, like, I don't know, queen g3 attacking the bishop. Let's say you defend like that, then I get d6. You know, I can make so many nice arrows. This must be crushing. I thought that would be good for me. So, and my opponent seemed to agree and didn't actually take en passant, unfortunately. Played bishop e7. A good move, of course. And I looked at these types of things. There's also, which I realized, I believe either this move or the next move, there's a trick here for black. If you play b4, so the knight gets kicked, where does it go? Well, you'd really like to play knight a4. So let's say I moved, let's say rook d1, that's the move I played. Let's say b6, b4, I really want to do this. But then bishop b5, which is a skewer, and the only way to defend it is bishop c4, but then the knight hangs. So that's unfortunate, so I can't actually play knight a4, which is also, it doesn't matter what I moved, so I'd have to move knight b1, and then my knight is bad, and I think this is still good for my opponent to do. Maybe instead of this directly, maybe instead of bishop b5 you try to prep it, then knight to this maybe, or knight d2. I don't think it works, but it's close. But yeah, you really want to play knight a4, but you can't. And my opponent actually didn't play it. There were a couple of moments where this might have been possible, and this was one of them. My opponent actually prepped it with queen c8. So now this is actually a threat, and I can't actually do all that much against bishop b5 if my knight gets kicked. Because, well, obviously, if I just don't do anything, let's say this, b5, and they don't, like, if I had a knight here, then I just take. So, what I did is I played the move a3, so after b4 I can take. And then this is nothing. That made sense to me. My opponent insisted, but I mean it's still completely fine because this bishop is defended, and after b4 take, rook takes, I just move back and the pawn is defended even, and I think that's all fine for me. And yeah, so now I started to look at options for pushing through here. So one thing, the clear thing is if I ever play e5 then f5 happens and like there's nothing. This is a fortress. You can even play h4 and the king is safe on g6. And I can try to pressure d7, but it's defended sufficiently and really difficult to attack actually. So I can't ever play e5 if f5 is an option. So you always have to play f5 first. But after f5 you have e5, which is the same kind of idea, but definitely better for me. This becomes a weakness, this is a weakness, and my bishop opens up. And I can like move my queen maybe something like this, get in, this bishop can go here, or I don't know, or here even, or here, or like through f2 to h4. I can set up massive pressure on the d-file, so f5 is definitely the move to play. But maybe I wanted to prep it, and I saw that queen f2 is a very good prep move, because I can go to h4 immediately. It does defend. So in the case of if they don't play e5, which is there for forces, and I take, then the pressure on f6 is probably killing. So that's why I played queen f2. My voice is kind of hurting, so I'm gonna take a drink. Sorry, new mug, quite big. It's 850 milliliters, pretty decent. Okay, yeah, queen f2, good preparatory move. There's also this nice variation that I saw, that if my opponent played, let's say, a pass move, doesn't matter, f5, e5, I can play bishop a7, and it's not actually attacked. So now I can like play knight d5 and go here, or here, or here, and it forces a trade to, for the most part, and then I take back with my bishop, and I mean, this looks great. I think the rook, let's see, does the rook get trapped? Because you have to go here. Not quite. This is the only square, and then, I mean, I can forcibly trade it, but that's not really what I'm looking for. But this is definitely one of the lines that I looked at. So rook 8, but none of this happened. Well, I mean, rook h7 didn't happen. My opponent played the move a5, so I could have done that. Could have done what I did, but I calculated something else which I'm not sure is correct. I looked at it with one of my teammates, not my opponent, but one of my teammates, or two of my teammates actually, and a friend of mine who also plays at the opponent's club. And I think what I did is correct, but it might be inaccurate. I mean, it's good enough basically. So I played the move f5. And I looked at, like, even after the move b4, which I saw, I think I can sack a piece with knight d5. I think that's good. I don't wanna hold on to my knight on c3, like, don't wanna take here or anything. Maybe I can even play e5 here, but I don't think so. I think I'd rather move knight d5, but so I will play knight d5 probably, and like, this looks good for me. Threatening d6 and like something like this. Probably okay. Not sure. Might not be. But fortunately b4 didn't happen, so I don't actually have to calculate that. My opponent played e5, and here's the move that I think is good enough but inaccurate. And I mean, in the game it just wins a pawn because my opponent believes me that it's good enough. I sack a piece. I'm pretty proud of this move actually. So in theory. In practice, I mean, I do have to prove it. And I do want to see what the engine says. In the game what happened is they take back, because if they don't take, I just win a piece or a pawn. Rook needs to move, and then I can even sack on f6 again and push e5. I don't know, something like that. That actually wins a pawn, I believe. Maybe not. But yeah, they have to take back, I thought, and then I take here. The line opens up, I take the knight, and that removes the defense of the square f6. So after rook f8, rook takes g8, I can play f6. And I saw a bit further than this. This didn't happen actually. My opponent didn't actually take on g8, and therefore it won a pawn. My opponent played rook h6 here. But after they take and I play f6, there's a double attack here. And the only way to defend, and also like, I mean, you can play this, but then take, and like, my queen gets in, and you can cry. So the only real way to defend is rook f8, which is, yeah, therefore the main variation in this variation. And then I saw queen h4, because it's still sufficiently defended. You can still take, but then my queen still gets into enough of an extent. So like, let's say here, 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 and I'm down a pawn, but this is hanging. The king has 0 squares, and my rook is coming in probably, or there, or my knight is active. I thought this was probably going to be pretty good. So after, but you might have bishop c5 here. Check, king moves, and then this might not be an issue as much. So you can play like d6, but then I take here and game continues, but this pawn is probably worth quite a bit. And also you need to go to the d file here, and I can take here, which is a funny. It doesn't really matter, but the game just continues here. You could also, after f6, just immediately take, but that's the same issue, and you lose a rook, because this is, I'm threatening a double attack, and you can't save yourself. So like, I mean, you also can't do like rook f8, because I take with checkmate immediately. Plenty of options. But my opponent actually didn't take. My opponent believed me, played rook h6. And here I decided to just save my piece. I looked at a lot of different things. There's this nice thing where the rook is hanging here. I looked at queen e2, queen e3, same issue. same trick. I looked at knight d5, but maybe my bishop gets trapped here then. F6 is not actually a move here, but it's close. The issue is that you can take with the rook, and I can trade, but it's not great. So this is a good move, prevents f6. But in the end I just played a boring move. It's probably fine. There might be something here, and I played that next move, so it's fine. My opponent didn't actually take. Important, by the way. Do you take with the knight or with the rook? Or with the pawn? Only one of them is good, because you really want to play knight takes, but then you lose. Oh wait, there's a knight block. Maybe you don't lose. Whoops, missed that. But it's fine. My opponent didn't actually take. My opponent played the move b4, after which it is actually a thing. So if after I move the knight, then you could try to take, and then you have to take with the rook. You have to have that option, otherwise you lose. So I looked at plenty of moves. Here I started calculating like infiltrations, attacks against the rook, stuff like that. This pawn is undefended, even attacks there, sacking the piece, of course. In the meantime, I wanted to get off of this diagonal, but onto this diagonal, or maybe hold on to this diagonal actually, in which case I'd have to go to e3. So there are basically two options for this queen to go, or I can move the knight. I actually settled on queen e3, which is completely fine. And my opponent's move was rook f6, because you can't take the knight, of course, and because I take the rook. And here I started spending a lot of time. So my opponent spent a lot of time because I played a gambit, put pressure and stuff like that. My opponent was at like 20 minutes and I had an hour at this point, something like that. We have 30 seconds per move as well. And after 40 moves we get another 30 minutes. But my opponent had 20 minutes left, and I had an hour, and I spent approximately, over the next 3 moves, about half an hour on a single move. And I never played it. And I really want to see what the engine thinks, but that will be later. The move that I looked at for 30 minutes was queen g5 in either this position or the next or the next or the next. Something like that. It's a piece sack, of course, and it will be in every other position, I believe. But the issue is that there is some pressure on like checkmates, and it's if the rook ever moves I get f6. So let's say they take. I believe the line that I looked at was no, not queen g8 actually. You take the pawn with check. So this is checkmate. So you can't go to f8. Option 2 is this, which is probably playable, which is the reason why I decided not to do it. Third option is rook f7, and then oh wait, rook f7 I just take. And after this you have to play the rook, and then I take here, and then threaten f7. There's always a check, by the way, which is also part of the reason why it might not be as good. But we'll see. We'll see what the engine mentions later. So I didn't actually play queen g5 on the next 3 moves, but I looked at it quite a bit and decided, unfortunately, that I should just be boring. I played knight e2. My opponent played a good move here, bishop b5, threatening 2 different things. Again, I looked at queen g5, which is a multiple piece sacrifice. But my bishop can't actually get taken now as well, which is a thing that matters. Oh wait, no wait, this was a bad move because of my move. But, I mean, it looks very scary, but I think... So, I think this doesn't work, and I think I should just play rook c1, which is the move that I played. Because I now own the c file, which is very important. And so my opponent played queen a6, and again queen g5 looks very strong. But again, I don't think it works, unfortunately. And also the king can't run here actually, which is a thing, a relevant thing, which is why I didn't, which is why this is actually stronger now. But I still didn't play it. I still decided to be boring and played rook f2. This actually has a secondary issue, so if I just play rook e1 instead, you can play queen b6, and now this forces a queen trade, which I did not. I mean, it's probably okay, but I didn't want that. But it's okay because material is equal and my position is just... I have more activity and this pawn will be a thorn, and I think I can win this endgame, but I didn't want to do that. I played rook f2 because now I think queen g5 sacks the knight. So maybe not actually, maybe I should just do this. But yeah, point remains that I'm not stuck in a queen trade, which is relevant, I think. But yeah, rook f2, my opponent didn't actually play queen b6. Where were we? Here. Yeah, my opponent just trades, and I take back. Still don't want a queen trade, but my opponent can force it. No wait, actually now they can't. I don't think, because I give this check. If you take, I win the queen. This is something I saw, and then I take. They block with the bishop, and then I take the rook. And you can't take the queen because then you'd be down material. You're down a rook, so you have to take back. And now I can save my queen. Yeah. Just had to do some massive theory just to be able to not trade queens. Massive tactical tricks and stuff. So queen b6 would not have worked actually. Yeah, my opponent just trades. Take back. And my opponent takes here. Another thing which I actually saw that queen e3 does compared to queen d2 is defend this pawn in this variation, because I just moved my knight and then that was relatively clear for me at least. I moved my knight and immediately my queen defends. It wasn't something that happened much later than just now. So no wait, I didn't actually take back. I played a better move than taking back, I think. So if I take back, the rook can be an issue on the b file, and maybe like queen b6 again, and then maybe not. Maybe queen b5 and queen might get in, and rook b6. Something. I wasn't very happy with that, so I played b3 instead. And just block the b file, probably win this pawn back eventually. Yeah, my opponent was starting to run out of time, like 5 minutes or something in this position. I had like 30, something like that, maybe a bit less. And my opponent started making moves that were okay, but I don't think they made it really difficult for me to prove my advantage, which I definitely should have despite being down a pawn. My opponent played rook c8, which was, I mean, that's an easy move, but I just hold on to the pile still. Maybe you can play a3. No, that just sacks. That just probably checkmate. But my opponent just takes, and I take back. And then here my opponent played a2, which is probably incorrect. It's a move, but it gets my rook off the c file because I'm basically forced to take. But the queen, the queen can occupy the c file there. The rook can't. So, and all of this is protected. Not that one, but that one doesn't matter. So the queen really isn't that strong, so I don't think this did all that much. Yeah, but yeah. My opponent really started to struggle with time and decided at some point to... Well, here I fork, by the way. My opponent decided, I believe, now to... Yeah. To sack the exchange, hoping that that would be good enough. It's probably not, but... the bishop starts doing something now, at least. Rook takes a5. And actually, here, my opponent flags. Which is unfortunate, but, that's the game. If we had played 6 more moves, the game would continue, but... Wait, sorry. Did I miss a move? Yes, I missed some moves, sorry. After... Yeah, take, not bishop f6 immediately, sorry, check first. And then this. Take, that makes a lot more sense. And here my opponent flagged. Well, before the move e4, but I only realized afterwards. This is definitely winning, but... Yeah. It's just, yeah. My opponent, we didn't have to continue this game. So the moves that I would have played is I would have played given this check, king moves up, and then queen c4, which prevents this queen from getting active, giving checks. You can go here, but then I think that's bad. I think that's probably losing. Like here. You can either do this or that, and like here, isn't this checkmate? Yes. So here, and probably queen actually, and this is also checkmate. Okay, good to know. So queen e3 loses on the spot. But after like d6, and this is also probably bad. Maybe this is a stalemate. Maybe this is perpetual. So maybe I shouldn't play that. But I can also just do this and rook here or something. Queen. It's not that easy, but it's probably winning. And this was my game. Yeah. Gambits. My opponent was struggling from move like 4, spent a lot of time, kind of stabilized but flagged in the end because they just couldn't play 40 moves in that time because I put so much pressure and they had to calculate everything. So let's see how I did. e4, c5, d4. This is just generic Smith-Morra Gambit. Apparently bishop f4 is not great. I saw that because the amount of moves actually dropped quite considerably, and then they increased because we just basically flipped moves here. We just, yeah, get to this position in a different move order. Doesn't really matter. This is all fine. Apparently bishop b3 is bad. It's really bad. Okay, sure. It looks decent. Knight d5 here immediately. a4 I saw, but you need to see that knight d5 is playable for a4 to be good, because otherwise the knight really has... it can go to e2, but I don't think I really want to. So let's say a4, b4, knight to d5, and if you take, yeah, and d6, and knight here, and rook e1, and you have to sack a piece here. Oh, yikes. That's even, this might be even worse than a piece. I did not see this. Let's just say queen b3. Oh, gross. This is just an engine line. You have to sack the queen. You don't even take the queen. Oh my god. And you still have to okay, you have to take the queen here and the piece as well. Okay. Yeah. I missed knight d5. Okay. What a move. Queen e2 is okay. Yeah, g5, that can't be good. And bishop e3 is the best move. Okay. Bishop g7 apparently is good. But like bishop c5, okay, that's not great. Knight d5 again. I looked at knight d5 in positions, just not this one. Okay, g4, that's bad, yeah. And h5, that's also, it's okay. It's a pawn. And taking is good, bishop takes, and again knight d5. This is also okay. f6 is meh. f4 is good, yes. Taking it is bad, you have to play b4, yeah. And then oh, you can go to a4? Oh, you just sack the exchange, yeah, of course. I mean, it's scary, but I did definitely consider it. Yeah. f4, bishop e7 is bad. Apparently immediately, knight d5 again, immediately f4. I believe this, was this the moment that I started looking at knight d5? No, I don't think so. This was a bit later. Rook a d8, queen c8, which is a bad move because of knight d5 again, of course. And if you take back and like d6 immediately, yeah, fair enough. a3 is fine. I'm definitely better though, so that's at least something. Queen b7 is interesting. Wasn't what was played, but it's interesting. Rook b8, knight d5 again, of course. Yeah, queen f2 is bad because of b4, and then you still have to find knight d5, but my plan, no, not a4, my plan was to just take. Rook takes, and then bishop back, and then sure, an f5, right? Or is this really that much of an issue? Probably not, right? e5 and like bishop moves, something here. Oh, you lose the pawn. Ah, I see. Then it might actually be bad, or not great. Bishop a7 is wrong. That's not a move. Bishop a7. No, that's a lie. That's an ancient move. Let's ignore ancient moves. Yeah, my opponent just gives me f5, e5, bishop takes e5 is apparently, yeah, inaccurate. You have to take, of course, makes sense. Okay, let's actually let it calculate a bit longer, because, yeah. Okay, apparently this is really bad. So let's actually take a look at this this game. Yeah, I mean, you have to play rook f8. We saw that. Queen h4, bishop c5, king h1, d6. We looked at this. Check. Take here. Yeah. And then this, it's just, there's nothing here, is the claim. And then you just have this. which is still something. But you really need to find most of this. Wait, Queen D. We actually looked at King D7, which apparently just loses. Lol. You can go to E7 now. Nice. Okay. But yeah. My opponent didn't take, and then it's really winning. And I looked at bishop, or I kind of looked at this, but I was boring. B4 is a good move. Apparently Queen D2 is way better, but I mean, this makes sense to me. Queen G5, not right now. Yeah, now it just, the engine says it loses a piece. I played knight E2, which is apparently bad. No, didn't happen. Bishop B5, which is okay. Rook C1. Apparently it's equal here, that's weird. A4. And you sack the piece and then what? Then you sack the rook even. And bishop. Why don't you just... What's going on? Okay, wait, sorry, that... Bishop takes E2, and now just play some moves. Oh, the bishop is trapped. That's the point. Okay. I see. So you play A4 because even though you lose a piece, the bishop is just trapped, so you win it back. Okay. Rook F2 is apparently a terrible move because of multiple reasons. Okay. And just the issue is Queen B6, but I thought that Queen B6, I mean, you can insert this, it doesn't matter. I thought this was fine, but apparently not. I mean, it loses a pawn, of course, but like, I mean, this is can't be that bad, right? Okay, maybe it is, because the rook is, you get a tempo and yeah, you get the tempo and then bishop c5. Okay. Whoops. B takes a3, b3, which I think is good, but apparently not. Rook c8 is apparently good. Rook c2 apparently not good. I guess. Oh, actually I wanted to look at multiple moments to play Queen g5, like here. Apparently it's similarly bad to what I wanted to play. I have to go here, of course. And this is nothing, unfortunately, because you block with the rook. This is a check and a defense rook, and then, yeah, okay. Fine. A2 is obviously bad. And now I'm ahead again. Yeah. This is a bad move, but I do have to take. King up, of course. Yeah, now it really doesn't matter anymore. Oh, Queen c8. It does actually win. I thought that it would be a perpetual, but I guess not. But this is totally fine, and that's just losing, but... yeah. Like d6 and Queen a4. Yeah. I mean, the end position I was winning, but apparently I didn't play it all that accurately after a while. Happens. Fortunately, my opponent had a similar rating as I had, and had like 10 minutes or so to play this, maybe 20 at some point. Yeah, you make mistakes. especially in time pressure, especially if you have to play half of the game on 20 minutes. But yeah, that was my game, and I actually won this. Our team won like 6.5 to 1.5, which is good. It was the first victory of this year. Yeah, first victory for me of this year at least. In my other team, we were 0 for 5, and I believe there I have a winning record in right now. Because of this, I also have a winning record in this competition, but yeah, I'm struggling, and my team, I'm kind of barely breaking even, and my team is really losing often. So that's, yeah. I mean, another player is I believe another player is like 4 out of 5, but most of the team is not doing very well. But yeah, it happens. We are definitely the weakest team in that group, and here we are one of the we're still kind of weak. But yeah, a win, and something that happens less often on this channel, a game is white. I'll see you next time, which is probably gonna be in like a month or so. We'll see. Actually, probably less. Like, I believe half a month, something like that. We'll see. See you there.